I used to think the most dangerous thing in the world was power, money, influence, control. I was wrong. The most dangerous thing in the world is someone who understands you better than you understand yourself. And unfortunately for me, I married her. My wife, Elena, was the youngest CEO in the country's history. At 32, she controlled a multinational tech empire that influenced governments, moved markets, and shaped the future. She sat at tables where decisions were made that changed millions of lives. Newspapers called her the Ice Queen. Investors feared her. Employees respected her. Rivals hated her. But to me, she was just my wife. At least, she was supposed to be. From the outside, our life looked perfect. We lived in a glass and marble mansion on the hill. Our fridge was always full of imported food I barely recognized. Our garage looked like a luxury car showroom. Every problem could be solved with money, lawyers, or assistants. And yet I had never felt so small. Not because she treated me badly, but because next to her, I felt invisible. Every morning she woke before me, already dressed, already calm, already 5 steps ahead of the day. She would drink her coffee silently, reading reports on a transparent tablet while I stared at my phone pretending to scroll. She always knew when I was nervous. She always knew when I was lying. She always knew when something was wrong, even when I hadn't realized it myself. At first I thought it was coincidence. Then I thought it was intuition. Then I started noticing things that didn't make sense. One evening I was thinking about quitting my job. I hadn't told her. I hadn't hinted. I hadn't complained. We were eating dinner. Out of nowhere she said, "If you want to leave that place, you should. You deserve better." I froze. Another time I was thinking about an old relationship I regretted. I felt guilty for no reason. She suddenly reached for my hand and said, "You're not a bad person for what you did back then. You were just young." My stomach dropped. How did she know? There were dozens of moments like that. She responded to thoughts I never voiced. She answered questions I never asked. She comforted pain I never confessed. It felt like living with someone who could see through my skull. And that terrified me. Because the mind is the last place a man is truly free. And mine wasn't private anymore. I started watching her instead of loving her. I noticed how her eyes lingered on my face just a second too long after I stopped speaking. I noticed how she would pause before answering, like she was waiting for something invisible. I noticed how she sometimes smiled, when I thought something kind, and how her face tightened, when I thought something ugly. That's when the fear became real. Not fear of her. Fear of myself. Because if she could see my thoughts, then she could see the parts of me I didn't want anyone to see. The selfish parts. The jealous parts. The insecure parts. The parts that felt weak next to her strength. I began to feel naked in my own home. So I did what cowards do. I decided to run. But I couldn't just leave. Divorcing Elena was not simple. She was powerful, connected, respected. If I asked for a divorce, people would ask why. And I had no answer that didn't make me sound insane. My wife is too perfect. My wife is too intelligent. My wife knows me too well. No judge in the world would take that seriously. So I made a different plan. I would make her hate me. I would become so unpleasant, so unlovable, so unbearable, that she would be the one to leave. I convinced myself it was kinder that way. Kinder than telling her the truth. "I'm afraid of you." So I started changing. Not all at once. Slowly. Quietly. Like poison in water. I stopped complimenting her. I stopped listening when she talked about her work. I came home later than usual. I answered her questions with one-word replies. I started criticizing small things. The way she dressed. The way she spoke. The way she corrected my grammar. The way she looked at me when I made mistakes. I acted like her success annoyed me. Like her intelligence bored me. Like her presence suffocated me. And every time I did something cruel, I felt relieved. because I was pushing her away. Or so I thought. Instead, she became gentler. She cooked my favorite meals. She left me small notes in my jacket pockets. She cancelled meetings to come home earlier. She asked me how I felt. Not what I thought. Not what I wanted. But how I felt. That made me angrier. Because guilt is easier to carry than kindness. So I pushed harder. I snapped at her in public. I mocked her in front of guests. I pretended to flirt with other women at events. I wanted her to be embarrassed. I wanted her to be hurt. I wanted her to say, "I'm done." But she never did. She never yelled. She never cried. She never begged. She just watched me. Quietly. Carefully. Like someone observing a storm they already understand. One night I finally lost control. We were alone in the living room. The city lights reflected on the glass walls around us. The silence felt heavy. I stood up and said, "Why won't you leave me?" She looked up from her book. "What do you mean?" "I'm terrible to you. I disrespect you. I ignore you. I treat you like trash." She closed the book. "I know." "Then why are you still here?" She stood and walked toward me slowly. Because she knew. She always knew. And that was the moment I realized. I wasn't running from her. I was running from the version of myself she could see. And no matter how far I tried to go, I couldn't escape my own mind. That night didn't feel dramatic at first. There was no thunder outside. No rain on the windows. No cinematic music playing in the background. Just silence. The kind of silence that feels loud because something important is about to be said. We were standing in the living room, facing each other across a distance that felt much larger than a few steps. The city lights outside painted pale reflections on the glass walls, and the house, our perfect, expensive, empty house, felt like a museum after closing time. I had just asked her why she wouldn't leave me. She didn't answer right away. She didn't look offended. She didn't look angry. She looked sad. Not for herself. For me. That hurt more than any argument ever could. "You're not trying to hurt me," she said quietly. "You're trying to disappear." The words didn't hit me immediately. They slipped into me. And then they exploded. I felt like someone had reached inside my chest and pulled out a secret I didn't even know I was hiding. "What are you talking about?" I said, but my voice was weaker than I wanted it to be. She took a step closer. I took a step back. She noticed. Of course she did. "You've been doing everything you can to make yourself unlovable," she continued. "Not because you hate me, but because you think I deserve better than you." I felt my throat tighten. That wasn't a thought I had ever spoken. Not to her. Not to anyone. Not even clearly to myself. And yet there it was. Standing between us. Naked. Ugly. True. "That's not," I started. But I couldn't finish. Because it was exactly that. She looked at me the way doctors look at patients when they already know the diagnosis. With patience. With care. With no judgment. "You feel small," she said. "Not because I make you feel small. But because you compare yourself to me." I wanted to argue. I wanted to deny it. I wanted to protect my pride. But pride is a very thin shield against truth. "I don't want to be compared to you," I said bitterly. "I don't want to be the husband of the CEO. I want to be someone." "You are someone," she replied immediately. But I shook my head. "To the world, I'm just your shadow. Your accessory. Your supportive husband." She flinched slightly at that. Not because I hurt her. But because she recognized the pain behind it. "I don't see you that way," she said. "That's the problem," I snapped. "You don't see me the way I see myself." She went quiet. And in that quiet, something shifted. Her expression softened. Not like a businesswoman. Not like a strategist. Not like a leader. Like a woman in love with a man who was hurting. I see you every day, she said gently. I see how you hesitate before speaking in meetings with my friends. I see how you shrink when someone praises me in front of you. I see how you joke about being just the husband before anyone else can say it. My heart pounded. I didn't realize how visible I was. I see how you pretend not to care, she continued, and then go quiet for hours afterward. I see how you avoid talking about your own dreams because you think they're smaller than mine. Each sentence felt like a light being turned on in a dark room. Rooms I had kept closed. Rooms I had forgotten existed. You think I don't notice, she said. But I notice everything about you. I felt exposed. Vulnerable. Stripped of my armor. That armor was sarcasm. That armor was distance. That armor was acting like trash. And she had walked straight through it. You don't want a divorce, she said. You want relief. Relief from what? I whispered. She hesitated. Then said the word I was afraid of. Shame. I swallowed. Because she was right. I felt ashamed that I wasn't more ambitious. Ashamed that I wasn't more successful. Ashamed that I wasn't more impressive. Ashamed that I wasn't enough next to her. I never wanted to make you feel that way, she said. I know, I replied bitterly. That's why it's worse. She looked confused. Because it means it's my fault, I said. Not yours. Silence returned. But it wasn't empty anymore. It was full. Full of things finally spoken. I can't escape how I feel when I'm with you, I said quietly. I feel like I'm constantly being measured. Compared. Evaluated. By me. No, I said. By myself. She nodded slowly. Understanding. Not defense. Not denial. Understanding. I never wanted to be your judge, she said. I wanted to be your partner. I laughed weakly. Well, you married someone who doesn't know how to stand next to you without feeling like he's in the way. She stepped closer. I didn't step back this time. You are not in my way, she said. You are my way. The words felt too big. Too generous. Too kind. I didn't trust them. Then why do you stay? I asked again. Her answer was simple. Because you are worth staying for. I felt tears rise. I hated that. I hated feeling weak. But she didn't see it as weakness. She saw it as honesty. You think I'm powerful, she said. But I'm not the one afraid right now. That was true. I was. And she knew. As she always did. Not because she could read minds. But because she could read me. Better than I ever had. That night didn't fix everything. But it changed the direction of everything. Because for the first time, I stopped trying to disappear. And started trying to be seen. After that night, something inside me shifted. Not healed. Not fixed. Just opened. Like a door I had kept locked for years finally being unlocked, even though I wasn't ready to walk through it yet. The silence between us changed. Before, it was tense. Now, it was thoughtful. We moved around each other differently. More slowly. More carefully. Like two people walking on thin ice, trying not to crack what had just begun to form. And the question that haunted me the most finally rose to the surface. How do you do it? She looked at me over her coffee cup the next morning. Do what? No, I said. Everything. She smiled faintly. I don't know everything. You knew enough, I replied. Enough to dismantle me without touching me. She set her cup down. That wasn't my intention. I know, I said. But I need to understand. Because if I don't, I'll keep being afraid of you. She didn't look offended. She looked relieved. Like she had been waiting for me to ask. I don't read minds, she said again, more firmly this time. I read people. That sounds like the same thing, I said. It's not, she replied. Mind reading is fantasy. This is training. She leaned back slightly and looked at the ceiling, thinking. I grew up in a house where nothing was said directly, she began. My parents were polite, civil, cold. Problems were never discussed. They were performed. Performed. She nodded. Through tone. Through silence. Through pauses. Through what was not said. I listened. She rarely talked about her childhood. I learned very early that words are the least honest part of a conversation, she continued. People lie with words. They reveal themselves with everything else. So you watched. I had to, she said. If I wanted to survive. That was the first crack in the image I had of her. Not the unstoppable CEO. Not the ice queen. But a child in a quiet house learning to read emotional weather so she wouldn't be caught in storms. I learned to watch eyes, she said. How they move when someone is anxious. How they avoid contact when someone feels shame. How they soften when someone feels relief. I thought about all the times she had looked at me just a second longer than normal. I learned to listen to breathing, she continued. Fast breathing means fear. Shallow breathing means tension. Slow breathing with clenched shoulders means someone is holding something in. I remembered how she always noticed when I sighed. I learned micro-expressions, she said. Tiny changes in the face that last less than a second. The twitch of a jaw. The tightening of lips. The slight raising of eyebrows. I swallowed. I had no idea how visible I was. And when I became a negotiator, she added, it saved me. She told me about her early career. Hostile boardrooms. Aggressive investors. Executives trying to intimidate her. She couldn't overpower them. So she outread them. She watched who leaned back when they lied. Who smiled when they were nervous. Who avoided numbers when they didn't know them. She won deals not by being loud, but by being precise. And with you, she said softly, I stopped using it as a skill and started using it as love. That sentence stayed with me. Using attention as love. I never analyzed you, she said. I never strategized against you. I just noticed you. I felt something twist in my chest. Because all this time, I thought she was controlling me, watching me, monitoring me. But she wasn't doing it to own me. She was doing it to understand me. I didn't realize how much it scared you, she said. If I had known, I would have stopped. You can't stop noticing, I said. She smiled sadly. No, I can't. We sat quietly for a moment. Then I asked the question I was afraid of. Do you ever use it on me, like in business? She looked directly at me. No, she said. Never. I searched her face. There was no calculation there. No delay. No evasion. Only certainty. You are the only person I refuse to treat like a project, she said. That broke something open inside me. Because I realized something. She wasn't powerful over me. She was vulnerable with me. She let me see her without armor. Without strategy. Without defenses. And I had been attacking her for it. I thought you were always ahead of me, I admitted. She shook her head. With the world, yes. With you, no. I follow you. That sounded impossible. You don't follow me, I said. I do, she replied. Your moods set the emotional temperature of our home. When you're quiet, everything goes quiet. When you're tense, everything feels sharp. I had never thought of myself as influential. But maybe influence doesn't always look like power. Maybe sometimes it looks like presence. I wasn't reading your mind, she said. I was listening to what your body was saying when your mouth was afraid. That sentence hit harder than anything else. Because it was true. I never gave myself permission to say what I felt. So my body said it instead. And she listened. That's when I realized the cruel irony. The thing I feared most about her, her ability to see me, was the thing I had been starving for my entire life. To be seen. Not judged. Not corrected. Not fixed. Seen. I'm sorry, I whispered. For what? For trying to make you leave, I said. She reached for my hand. I know. And for the first time, that word didn't scare me, because now I understood what it meant. Not control. Not surveillance. Not power. Just attention. Careful. Patient. Loving attention. And I had mistaken it for something dangerous, when it was actually something rare. After everything that had happened, the late-night confrontation, the unspoken truths, the revelation of how she read me, I finally realized why I had really wanted a divorce. It wasn't because I hated her. It wasn't because I had fallen out of love. It wasn't even because I thought she was too perfect. It was simpler. And yet, more complicated than anything I could admit. I felt unworthy. Not just of her. Of everything around her. Of the life she had built. Of the home we shared. Of the man I saw in the mirror every morning. I had married Elena at 28. I had thought I wanted a strong woman, someone ambitious, someone who could challenge me. I had been drawn to her like a moth to a flame I didn't know I would be burned by. At first, it had been intoxicating. The thrill of her intelligence. The fascination of her drive. The allure of a woman who seemed unstoppable in every room she entered. I had loved the idea of standing next to someone so accomplished, so admired. But admiration isn't love. Or at least, not the kind that sustains a marriage. Because admiration makes you small. You start to shrink to fit the shadow of someone else's greatness. You begin to question your every thought, every choice, every ambition. And slowly, quietly, you lose confidence in yourself, even if she never asked you to. I hated that about myself. I hated that I couldn't be the man I wanted to be. The man I felt I needed to be in order to deserve her. And that's when the idea came to me. Divorce. If I couldn't stand beside her as an equal, I would escape. If I couldn't feel worthy, then I wouldn't force her to live with my inadequacy. It was noble in my mind. Heroic, even. Except it wasn't. It was cowardice. Because instead of facing my insecurities, I tried to manipulate her to leave me. I became cruel. I became selfish. I tried to push her away. I thought that would fix the imbalance in my heart. But Elena, she never left. No matter what I did, she stayed. She stayed with a patience and understanding I didn't deserve. She stayed with a love that was unconditional, even when my actions were anything but. One night, after a particularly bitter argument in our bedroom, I collapsed onto the edge of the bed. I had been raising my voice, mocking her work, pretending to be disinterested. She had said nothing but watched me, her eyes calm, almost piercing. I broke. I don't deserve you, I whispered. My voice barely audible. She didn't answer immediately. She sat beside me, leaving a respectful distance, letting me breathe. Then she said something I will never forget. You don't have to deserve me. You only have to be honest with yourself. Her words struck me with a force I couldn't resist. Honesty? I had been hiding from myself for years. Hiding from my inadequacy. Hiding from my fears. Hiding from the part of me that thought I was small. She held my hand then, not tightly, not possessively. Just offering support. Offering presence. Offering understanding. And I realized that my desire to leave wasn't about her. It was about me. I wanted to leave because I was afraid of being seen. I was afraid of letting her see my weakness, my insecurities, my shame. I was afraid of letting anyone see the truth of who I was when I was not the perfect husband, the perfect man, the perfect partner. And Elena had already seen it. Not with judgment. Not with critique. But with attention. With understanding. With love. She had always known me better than I knew myself. And that terrified me. I spent weeks reflecting on our marriage after that night. I realized that I had been carrying a fear that had nothing to do with her actions and everything to do with my own self-perception. I had been projecting my feelings of inadequacy onto her, blaming her perfection for my own lack of confidence. I remembered all the moments I had tried to push her away, the nights I came home late, the careless words I threw at her, the times I mocked her success in front of friends. All of it had been an attempt to protect myself, to avoid being vulnerable, to avoid confronting the truth that I felt unworthy. And yet, each time I tried to push her away, she only drew closer. She didn't retaliate. She didn't withdraw. She simply noticed. She understood. She loved. Her patience became my mirror. Every act of cruelty I committed reflected back at me not anger, but compassion. Every sarcastic remark I made was met with calm, attentive observation. Every attempt to escape from her presence was met with gentle persistence. It was maddening. Because the truth is, I wanted to leave not to hurt her, but to save myself from being truly seen. But she didn't allow it. And eventually, I realized that her refusal to leave wasn't about control. It wasn't about dominance. It wasn't about power. It was about love. The kind of love that refuses to let someone hide from themselves. The kind of love that patiently waits while you struggle to accept your own worth. The kind of love that sees your darkness and still chooses to stay. One night, I finally admitted it to her. I tried to make you leave because I thought I didn't deserve you, I confessed. My voice cracked. But now I see. I don't want to leave. I want to be better. I want to face myself. I want to be honest with myself, with you. She smiled softly, brushing a strand of hair from my face. You don't have to be perfect, she said. You just have to be real. And I will meet you there. For the first time in our marriage, I felt seen. Truly seen. Not the version of myself I wanted her to admire. Not the version I thought she would respect. Not the version I thought deserved her love. But the real me. Flawed. Insecure. Afraid. And yet, wanting to be better. That realization was both terrifying and liberating. Because finally, I understood the real reason I wanted a divorce. It wasn't about leaving her. It was about escaping my own fear. Escaping the truth about myself. And now that the truth was laid bare, I had a choice. I could continue to hide behind anger, sarcasm, and cruelty. I could continue to run from myself. Or I could accept the fact that being seen by her was not punishment. It was an opportunity. An opportunity to grow. To learn. To become a man worthy of being loved not for what I could do or achieve, but for who I truly was. And I chose to stay. Not because I had no other option. Not because I was trapped. But because I realized that leaving would have been an act of cowardice. And I was done running. Elena didn't make me stay. She simply refused to let me run from myself. And that was more powerful than anything I had ever experienced in my life. Because sometimes the person you think you are pushing away is the very person holding up the mirror that allows you to finally see yourself. And sometimes, the one you fear most is the one you need the most. That night, for the first time, I understood the true depth of her love. Not a love that blindly follows, or blindly forgives, or blindly accepts. But a love that challenges. That confronts. That refuses to allow hiding. That demands honesty. And in that honesty, I found a freedom I never knew I had. The freedom to admit my flaws. The freedom to stop pretending. The freedom to be the man I had been too afraid to become. I looked at her and whispered, "Thank you." Not for her patience. Not for her power. Not for her understanding. But for refusing to let me run from myself. The days that followed were unlike anything I had ever experienced. Before, my marriage had been a careful balancing act. A performance where I pretended to be someone I wasn't. A show where I hid behind sarcasm, indifference, and pride. Where I thought the safest way to survive was to mask my fear, my weakness, and my insecurities. But after that night, after the revelation that Elena saw through me and understood me better than I understood myself, something changed. I stopped performing. At first, it was terrifying. I caught myself pausing before speaking, afraid that my words would betray me. Afraid that my honesty would be too much. Afraid that being real would push her away. But she didn't recoil. She didn't flinch. She didn't judge. She simply listened. And I realized that being truly seen didn't hurt. It didn't shame me. It didn't break me. It liberated me. For the first time, I let her see the real me. Not the version I thought would impress her. Not the version I thought she expected. Not the version I had been hiding behind for years. But the messy, flawed, insecure man who had been scared to love and scared to be loved. It wasn't easy. Every day brought new challenges. Old habits die hard. I still felt the urge to retreat, to deflect, to act indifferent. I still wanted to push away the very person who refused to let me go. But every time I tried, she met me with patience, with understanding, with quiet encouragement. "Don't hide from me," she would say softly. And slowly, piece by piece, I started dismantling the walls I had built around myself. I told her about my fears, not the small ones, the ones no one ever admits. The ones that gnaw at you in silence. The ones that make you feel like you're not enough. I admitted my jealousy of her success. My anxiety about failing. My insecurity about being ordinary in a world that demanded extraordinary. And each time I spoke, she didn't judge. She didn't correct me. She didn't lecture me. She simply acknowledged me. "You're allowed to feel all of this," she said one evening as we sat on the balcony, the city lights glowing below us. "It doesn't make you weak. It makes you human." And it was true. Being human felt like the first breath of air after drowning. It was terrifying. It was messy. It was raw. But it was real. I also began to notice the small ways she had always been there for me, ways I had taken for granted. The mornings she made my favorite breakfast, even when she had 1,000 meetings. The notes she left in my jacket pockets, little reminders that she believed in me even when I didn't. The quiet moments when she simply held my hand without saying anything at all. I realized that her love wasn't grand gestures or dramatic proclamations. It was attention, care, patience, understanding. It was the unwavering choice to remain present even when I tried to push her away. It dawned on me that the reason I had acted like trash, the reason I had wanted a divorce, was never about her. It was about my fear of being truly seen, of being truly understood, of being truly loved without conditions. And that realization hit me harder than anything else. Because love like that doesn't come around often. And when it does, it doesn't chase you away. It meets you where you are, messy, imperfect, human, and refuses to let go. I started to change. Not overnight. Not perfectly. But steadily. I began listening to her. Not just hearing her words, but understanding her silences. I began noticing her feelings, her needs, her small gestures that spoke volumes. And she noticed me. Truly noticed me. She saw me when I was afraid. She saw me when I was unsure. She saw me when I was flawed. And in return, she allowed herself to be seen by me. It was mutual. It was real. It was love. Our conversations grew deeper. Our silences became comfortable. Our connection, once strained by fear and pretense, transformed into something stronger than I had ever imagined. I began to understand that the power she had, the so-called mind reading, wasn't power over me. It was power for me. It was a gift that forced me to confront my own truths, my own fears, my own limitations. And in doing so, it allowed me to grow. I started opening up in ways I had never dared. I shared my dreams, my failures, my regrets. I shared the parts of myself I had kept hidden, even from myself. And every time I did, she responded with love, not judgment. Support, not criticism. Understanding, not impatience. It was transformative. Because for the first time, I felt seen. Not as a shadow. Not as a reflection. Not as a lesser version of someone else. But as myself. And being myself was the most powerful feeling in the world. It wasn't easy. Old habits die slowly. There were moments of doubt, of fear, of wanting to retreat. Moments when I questioned whether I deserved her patience, her love, her attention. Moments when I feared that being seen meant being exposed, vulnerable, weak. But each time, she reminded me, you are allowed to be real. You are allowed to be human. You are allowed to be yourself. And gradually, I stopped running. I stopped hiding. I stopped pretending. I started embracing who I was, flaws and all. And in embracing myself, I embraced her as well, not just the CEO, not just the woman everyone admired, not just the powerful and brilliant partner I had feared, but Elena, the woman who had chosen to love me even when I tried to push her away. It was terrifying. It was messy. It was overwhelming. But it was love. And I realized that the act of being seen, truly seen, is one of the most intimate acts of trust and courage a person can experience. Because it requires vulnerability. It requires honesty. It requires surrender. And in that surrender, I found freedom. Freedom from fear. Freedom from pretense. Freedom from the need to escape myself. I began to live in a way I never had before. I spoke more honestly. I acted more genuinely. I embraced my emotions instead of suppressing them. I allowed myself to feel fully, the joy, the fear, the love, the pain. And she was there. Always. Not to fix me. Not to control me. Not to judge me. But to witness me. To understand me. To love me. The man who once wanted to run, to escape, to hide from himself, now stood in the light. Not perfect. Not fearless. Not invincible. Just human. And that was enough. Because she was human too. And together, in our shared humanity, we discovered a love that was more profound than power, more enduring than perfection, and more transformative than anything I could have imagined. I let myself be seen. And in doing so, I let myself love. Truly. Deeply. Fearlessly.